Hi everyone. My sincere apologies for starting a couple minutes late. I had an issue with my setup, but we're here now. Sincerely sorry for taking quite the time. Okay. So today is another office hour, and I did share a form on the LMS for you all to drop questions ahead of our office hour, but most of the questions that I saw there were pretty much about the LMS and about Slack, which isn't the goal of our office hours. So before I move on to anything else, I'm just going to give you all time to maybe drop some questions that you might have that we can most likely go through. Okay, so I'm seeing some questions, and it's some is about Slack. There's also another about resources. Please just give couple more days, and resources will be available most likely before the end of the week. And someone asked, is this class for front-end web development? This is office hour for mobile development. Between Visual Studio and Android Studio, which ID is preferred? There really isn't one that is better than the other. But in most cases, I would recommend that people who are new to mobile development start off with Android Studio, because it's a lot better to set up, rather it's a lot easier to set up your virtual devices, especially Android virtual devices on Android Studio than it is on Visual Studio code for Visual Studio. So it's up to you, whichever you actually prefer. Well, for the Slack link, I'm just going to tell you what was mentioned yesterday during the onboarding. Please keep refreshing the link, and if it doesn't work when you refresh it, keep refreshing. Eventually, you're going to gain access to the Slack workspace. Just keep refreshing the link, please. Okay, on Slack, some people mentioned that they would like to know how to use the how to use DartPad. Although alongside the resources that would be made available, you would see a video made to show you how to use DartPad. But for the sake of this call, I'm just going to show you what DartPad is and how you can use it. But please still make your questions available in the meantime. Hoping that you can see my screen. I'm just going to get started. Please note that DartPad is not the same as Dart. Dart is a programming language, while DartPad is an online code editor where you can use to just test out code online without having to install an IDE. So this is ideally when you go to this link, dartpad.dev, you would be welcomed with this screen. This is a sample code, and when you run it, it's going to display what is expected to display in the print statement. Just very briefly, I could explain what the sample code is about. This is a for loop that is looping through numbers 1 to 5 and displaying hello plus the increment of the numbers. So here you have an integer I that's been assigned a value of 0. While this loop runs, it's meant to increase by 1, and that is what is going on here. So you have 0 plus 1, 1 plus 1, 2 plus 1, and so on till you get to 5. So as soon as you get to the highest number possible, the loop stops. Hopefully that doesn't confuse anyone, but there's a video that's going to explain more on that in the resources. I've said the resources so many times that you all are probably thinking it's some mystical creature, but don't worry about it. It's going to be made available before the end of the week. Just please be patient with me. Thank you. So yeah, like I said, this is pretty much all that DartPad is about. Another key thing that you should note here is this thing here, this void main in brackets and then the curly braces. This is required for your code to run. Without this, it's actually called a function. Without this function, whatever code that you write is not going to be displayed here in the console. For example, if I were to print it's not even possible to do this outside of the function body. But okay, hold on. If I were to create a function called, sorry, And inside it, I put in my print statements, and then I click run. Nothing is going to be displayed in the console because nothing is going to be displayed in the console because this method or this function was not called inside of the main method. Even if it's doing something incredibly important, it would not be called unless it is inside of the main method. So if I were to do call my name here and then run, only then will we see the string, my name is Abbie. So I said this a lot in the tasks that come, that whatever code you're going to submit as an answer to the task I'll be given, if this main method is not in your code, if it's not in your submission is pretty much going to be viewed as void, because we can't run any code you submit without this main method. So it's important that you have to take note of that. No matter how engrossed you are in your task, make sure that you do not skip having the main method and calling all your functions or whatever inside of the main method so that it can be easily tested. So I'm going to go on to YouTube now to see if there are any questions. Okay, Bumi, I see you. You have a very, very valid point as to how it's hard to ask questions without resources, but it's also possible that some of you made some research ahead of class and would have had some questions pop in your head before the office hour, but it's also fine if there are no questions at the moment. We can always save that to when the resources are available. I'm not sure what you mean by speaking in full and not using acronyms. Could you please explain? Would we build iOS apps or just for Android? I did mention yesterday that with Flutter, you can develop applications that are compatible for both Android and iOS. But if you do not have a Mac, that's a MacBook, you would not be able to test your Flutter applications on an iOS device. So it would majorly be Android if you're not on a Mac, but if you're on a Mac, you can test on both Android or iOS. Okay, just so I don't keep. Okay. For the Slack link, once again, please keep refreshing so that you can join Slack. Just keep refreshing the link, and eventually you're going to be able to have access to the Slack workspace. For example, instead of LMS, you mentioned it before. It's going to be really difficult saying the full meaning of LMS all the time. It's actually a pretty lengthy word. So please pardon me if I use LMS. Thank you. Okay. Our next office hour is going to be, let me see. Our next office hour would be on Friday, so most likely the resources for week 1 should be available to you before the next office hour. So that should give enough time, I guess, for any potential questions. You could always also ask your questions on Slack, but it would be best if you asked it in the channel instead of as a direct message to me, so that every other person could learn from your question, and I would have to ask the question. I won't have to answer the question multiple times. So please be patient. Before the next office hour, most likely the resources will be available to you. You're going to receive resources to understand what Flutter is about, what mobile development is about in general, and also how to get started with Dart. So fingers crossed that there will be questions in the next office hour so that it wouldn't be this awkward. Hi, Kingsley. Did you select mobile Flutter as an elective? Did you enroll for mobile Flutter? Else you may not be able to see the calendar task, or might be one who doesn't understand. All right, just so I don't keep you all on the call much longer, just please be patient before the next office hour. Resources for the first week will be available. In the meantime, you could keep socializing on Slack. Sorry, this is insensitive to those who haven't joined Slack yet, but please keep refreshing the link so that you'll be able to have access to the Slack workspace. For those already on Slack, keep socializing. You could also make your own private research on what this entire track is going to be about while you wait for the resources to be published on the LMS. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining. Really grateful as always that you all got to join, and also you guys don't hold back, and I like that. I like that, it's really nice. So yeah, I'll see you all on Friday, next office hour. Hi, Koda, you have a question? It would be best to ask it real quick so that we could wrap this up. Hi, Marie. Of course, there are quite a number of companies that have adopted Flutter as the framework to build their mobile applications. I mean, if companies haven't adopted this, then we would be suffering. But no, there are a ton of companies that have adopted Flutter to build their mobile applications. So you do not need to be afraid. There are lots of job opportunities for Flutter developers, so many of them, that would be available to you when you're ready to start applying. All right, so that'll be it for today. As always, I'm on Slack. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, guys.